glad to welcome you all here today. My name is Anastasia Martinova, and I am a foreign real estate sales specialist at Nevestate. Today, our partner Valeria will also be co-hosting the webinar with me. Valeria represents one of the key developers in Bali. As a sales specialist, I can say that I've looked at dozens of projects in Bali, and the developer Valeria works with really resonates with me. I have the best feelings as a broker because their projects are always done at a high level, technologically advanced and of high quality, especially considering such a challenging location for construction as the island of Bali. Today, Valeria and I will talk about the general trends of the real estate market in Bali, why it can yield up to 16% per year in foreign currency as a financial instrument. If we compare it to other locations, no other place can boast such numbers. And what pitfalls exist, because there are always pitfalls everywhere, and I believe it's important to talk about them. We are an international real estate sales company, Westate, and we've been in the market for 8 years with offices in Moscow and Dubai. Over 8 years of work, we've built a portfolio spanning 40 countries around the world. In 40 countries, we can help you find real estate both for investment and for your own residence. And in our portfolio, we've brought together more than 200 developers. It's important to understand that we don't work with just any developer, because before being included in our portfolio, a developer must undergo internal due diligence. That's why our clients can be confident in the quality of the properties we offer. We don't just help you select a property, we also provide full support throughout the transaction, right up to post-sale service. Before entering into a deal, we always think ahead about the exit strategy, which is why we provide you with clear analytics explaining exactly why this property is worth buying and considering as your investment tool. Tax planning and legal consultations. In addition to helping you select real estate, we also assist you in obtaining second citizenship and residence permits. Valeria, I'll hand it over to you now. Let's finally move on to the Bali market.
Thank you, Anastasia. Let's move on to the Bali market. I'm pleased to represent the developer. Indeed, we are among the top 3 largest developers on the island of Bali. We've been in the market since 2014, and that's when we started our journey. With management, it is precisely the management that delivers figures like 15 to 16%. This is truly an excellent return for investors and probably the highest in the world if you compare it to other locations. If we look at the overall developed area, it's about 12,000 square meters. And if you might get the impression, for example, that this isn't much in reality, for a small island like Bali, this is quite a significant development. We have 12 properties in our portfolio, 9 of which are fully completed. For each property, for every unit, we have all the reports which we can show you during personal consultations in joint Zoom meetings. What I'd like to point out is that our investors are not limited even to just one country, like Russia, for example. These are investors from 17 different countries because Bali is interesting to the whole world, both as a tourist destination and, of course, from an investment perspective. A large company is not just a developer, but a full-cycle construction holding with its own assets. Therefore, when we talk about the specialists working in our company, these are truly highly qualified professionals. There are more than 1,500 of them. And the main question, the reason we've gathered here today, is why do experienced investors choose Bali? First and foremost, it's because of a stable economy. Indonesia demonstrates GDP growth of 5 to 6% per year. Here, inflation is low, 2 to 3%, and in some cases, it can even be less than 1%. Of course, you have to look at the specific situation. The second important and equally significant point is, of course, the growth of tourism. If we look at the numbers, even during COVID, Indonesia and the island of Bali showed excellent results. When the whole world was shut down due to the pandemic, there were about 6 million tourists who remained in Bali. And if we look at the projected numbers up to 2029, the forecast is about 19 million people. These are specifically tourists. So the tourist flow is constantly increasing. And this is absolutely great for investors. Why? Because there is high occupancy of properties. Tourists come from all over the world, which means purchasing power is also high. And of course, probably the most important point is the accessibility of investments. That is, you can make investments absolutely without leaving your home. Remote transactions are as simple as possible, both in processing, signing, and finalizing the deal. So, Anastasia, maybe you have a question. If you have a question, feel free to ask. Maybe I'm missing some points. If not, let's move on.
Yes, Valeria, I think our viewers would be interested to know what drives the growth of tourism.
Of course. The growth of tourism is mainly due to probably three of the most important factors. The first is infrastructure, the second is marketing, and of course, the third is economic. First of all, I want to mention the expansion of the existing airport, because this will increase the number of destinations, especially direct flights, and a new airport is also being built, which is a significant city-forming development. And that's an important factor. And of course, the increase in charter flights, because tourism is both external and internal. Indonesia as a whole consists of 17,000 islands, so it's not just Bali, our small island. It's truly a large country, and it ranks fourth in the world by population. That's why domestic tourism is also very important here, and it probably plays a significant role in this matter. Of course, there's also an increase in the promotion of different locations. It's not just Canggu, not just Uluwatu, it's also Ubud, Lovina, the west of the island, and the east as well. Various retreats are also attracting people. Retreats, yoga, and, for example, wellness tour destinations, when tour operators organize such trips specifically to Bali. And of course, from a marketing perspective, it's about promoting Indonesia as a safe destination. That's also quite an important point. And in terms of infrastructure, what can be included here? A large number of well-known operators and hotels operate in Bali. These include Hyatt, Marriott, Kempinski. There are many different operators of global renown present here. Therefore, thanks to these factors, the tourist flow will continue to grow. And accordingly, from this, we understand where the occupancy of properties will come from and where the income for investors will be generated. Let's move on then. An overview of the Bali real estate market. If we look at the period from 2022 to 2025, the average price per square meter ranges from $2,500 to $4,000. It is important to note that this price includes everything. In other words, when an investor acquires a property, they receive it fully finished, furnished, right down to the pillows, spoons, forks, slippers, all managed by a management company. A fully ready turnkey business. If we look at property flipping as well, the price growth, both due to steady organic price increases and also rising prices in certain specific locations, will generally be in the range of about 15 to 25%, which will certainly be considered attractive for investors in Bali. And what is also important is that the secondary market is being formed not only by Russia, but also by Europe, the US, China, and Australia, which is literally just a 2-hour flight away. In other words, these investors have a strong and high demand for secondary real estate, meaning ready-to-move-in properties. Therefore, an investor who buys in this regard, they can really make great profits through flipping, specifically long-term flipping, not during construction, but after the construction is completed. And especially when the investor already has a complete report in hand on income and expenses, showing how much the villa, apartment, or townhouse, doesn't matter which, generates in dividends. This market really, especially for Europeans whose income is not as high as what the Bali real estate market can offer. We can also take a look together. This is our case study. In fact, our company has quite a few case studies because we've delivered a total of 9 complexes. Here, a 2-bedroom villa was purchased by an investor in July 2020. In that year, a 2-bedroom villa was bought for $212,000, and to be precise, in August 2023, it was resold by him for $404,000. That means the profit growth was 90%. This is truly a great case study. You could say the investor doubled their money in just about 13 months of ownership. So that's the villa. This is quite a valuable case, but again, we have a lot of them. And if you'd like to see, for example, how apartments perform or how 3-bedroom or 1-bedroom villas perform, of course, we can also go over this with you on Zoom with the Nevestate team in a personal Zoom meeting. As I mentioned earlier, tourism is truly the essential foundation and the main driving force of the market. The total tourist flow in the year 2024 is estimated to be 16 million visits overall. If we look at the districts that are particularly attractive to tourists, they are the Bukit Peninsula, Canggu, and Ubud. What is the difference between these locations in general? Each location is completely different from the others, but each one captivates and attracts with its uniqueness. For example, if we take Ubud, it's in the center of the island. There is no ocean here, but there are amazing jungles, lots of waterfalls, and many retreats and yoga sessions take place here. It's the spiritual heart of Bali. And of course, when it comes to the topic of spirituality, I think anyone immediately thinks of Bali because here you can truly enjoy and experience it for yourself. Canggu is a place that, it's the unofficial capital of Bali. This is probably the main hub for young and middle-aged tourists. Why am I mentioning this age group? By the way, in reality, there are people of all ages here. It's just that the majority are probably of middle age because there are so many different beach clubs, restaurants, bars, and a lively social scene here. And especially the surfing community, because basically Bali as an island was first discovered by Australians who found great surfing here, and now people from all over the world come here for the waves. Bukit is also a great location that's developing here. White sand, blue water, and it's also a swimmable beach, unlike, for example, Canggu, if we compare them. This location is also gaining popularity at an incredibly fast pace. And of course, the main income comes from short-term rentals. Thanks to the high tourist flow, occupancy rates for properties are around 70 to 80%. And if we look at the average nightly rate for renting, say, a 2-bedroom villa, like the one I showed on the previous slide, it's about $250 to $350 per night. Let's move on. So what are the key advantages for investors? First and foremost, it's the affordability of purchasing, because the price starts at $115,000 for properties. That's for a 40 square meter studio, which, as I mentioned, includes absolutely everything: the design project, finishing, furniture, a fully completed project. Because if, for example, you look at what you can buy in Moscow for that price, well, maybe you could get something outside the MKAD. Experienced investors, and especially my colleagues in estate, I think, will confirm my words. And most importantly, when an investor buys real estate in Bali, they receive passive income in dollars. That is, which is also quite significant. You can purchase real estate in installments. Installments are available starting from 35% and they are interest-free. What I'd like to highlight is that real estate here is attractive also because in Bali we have a limited amount of land available specifically for development. And another very important point I want to mention is that the land is limited from a religious perspective as well. In other words, they cannot violate the geography or expand it in any way. Because of this, the supply is only 5%. Just think about these numbers. Only 5% of the land is allowed to be developed. So for an investor, this is quite a unique product that they are purchasing. The process and paperwork are simple. The transaction is carried out remotely. Everything, including the signing of all contracts, is done through programs and companies that are licensed, such as DocuSign. So, and for our investors, a large number of our transactions, 87%, are completed remotely. And of these transactions, probably about 60% of the investors have never been to the site, which shows just how easy it is now to close a deal, earn, and receive income in dollars. Of course, I'd like to highlight the unique atmosphere. We'll talk a little more about this now. In general, both the local Indonesian people and the vibrant corners of nature that are found here create a unique atmosphere. Valeria, I'd like to add from my side that we're talking about the increase in real estate value. I also want to add that here there is an increase in land value precisely due to restrictions. Because only 5% of the land is left for development, our investors need to understand that over 5 years, land increases in value by 20% annually. That's why this is one of the main points. We can't just create an artificial island in Bali and build additional skyscrapers there, which would naturally affect the liquidity of your property next door. Of course, that won't happen here. And from my observations, all projects in Bali are being developed in small quantities, which will definitely affect your liquidity. Yes, that's absolutely true. And I'd also like to point out that Balinese people are very protective of their land. And also, for religious reasons, the height of buildings cannot exceed 15 meters. So, owning property on land that is quite limited in availability and with strict height restrictions in place is also a great advantage and a unique feature of this island. There is no full legal ownership right here, specifically because we run into the issue of preserving land for Indonesians. The next form of ownership is land lease. There is leasehold and there is also freehold. If you carefully look at the numbers and at the years involved, when a developer leases land from a landlord, freehold can seem a bit more attractive because it is for up to 80 to 90 years compared to leasehold, which is usually for 60 years. But it's important to understand that freehold is more suitable, of course, for those investors who are expats or, for example, are starting their own business here or are somehow fully relocating to Bali. I'll explain why there's a difference. Because, for instance, freehold cannot be arranged remotely. You need to come to Bali in person and open your own company. You also need to hire staff and have the required authorized capital. Leasehold, on the other hand, allows us to complete the transaction remotely in a fully transparent way. And if we look at the cost, leaseholds are, of course, much more attractive for investment purposes because freehold is more expensive and, unfortunately, it kills the project's profitability, especially when we're talking about investment properties. In other words, the simplicity of the process is exactly what we need, and the ability to recoup your investment property several times over the entire leasehold period is precisely the advantage that leasehold gives us. I'd like to say a few words about Bali, about its truly unique and vibrant nature. This island is actually incredibly diverse. Here you can have a great time in the ocean, go surfing, go for a swim, or you can head to the north of the island to cool off, pick strawberries, or play golf. And in the south of the island, you can swim in the blue ocean with its white water. There is a really large community here that is focused on sports. There's paddle, badminton, football, and a huge variety of different sports clubs. There are really a lot of them. You can really see this here when you arrive in Bali. It's all about a healthy lifestyle, active sports, and of course, a huge number of communities, surfers, IT specialists, dog lovers, and just ambitious people. Bali is, I think, such a unique place that you really should visit and, in general, just enjoy and experience it. You can feel both its spiritual side and its nature for yourself. One important thing to note, especially for investors, is the education in Bali. And here I'd like to talk about the schools. International schools with international programs are very well developed here, giving students the opportunity to enroll in various well-known universities. And of course, the quality of education is at a high level. A high level, that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them as well.
Valeria, from my experience, I can say that clients often ask about Russian language schools because most families come here with children who, for example, are 13 or 14 years old, and the children, for instance, don't speak English. So, Valeria, what should such families do? Which school should they choose? And can a child who doesn't speak English be accepted, for example, into an international school? Or are there some separate schools? And if such schools exist, could you please tell us which areas these families should focus on?
Anastasia, that's an excellent question. Thank you very much for it. I'll even share from my own personal experience when I arrived in Bali with children who didn't speak any English. Yes, indeed, schools do accept children who don't speak the language. They have a highly adapted environment and a very gentle integration process without stress for the child. That is, there are additional, how should I put it, clubs, although clubs might not be the right word, additional sections, extra classes specifically for learning English. And also, when a child, or really anyone, even an adult, finds themselves in an English-speaking environment, they pick it up very quickly, especially children. They learn incredibly fast. As a result, the progress happens in an amazingly short time. Literally within 6 months, children are speaking English and can communicate fully. And when it comes to studying, if there are any difficulties or challenges, of course, all schools have additional adaptation programs in place to provide support. That is, each school has its own approach, of course, but such support does exist. There are also, of course, schools for situations where, for example, someone might not learn English or attend an international school. Maybe for some people, the financial aspect is a barrier. There are also schools that follow our Russian educational system. So there is absolutely no problem here, and there's nothing to be afraid of. Even children who study in international schools are exposed to the maximum variety because in such schools, there are children in the class from all over the world. Yes?
Valeria, since today we're talking about areas in Bali during this webinar, could you tell us which areas have Russian-speaking schools and which areas should families like that consider?
There are some in the Canggu area because Canggu, as I mentioned, is kind of the unofficial capital of Bali. And you can find absolutely everything here, from Michelin-starred restaurants and cafes to Russian-speaking schools. There are even restaurants and cafes here opened by Russians and even Georgian cuisine. All sorts of different options, really. If we look at another additional area, that's Ubud. Again, why is it only in these two areas for now? Because these are mainly the super developed areas. In areas that are still developing, it's really just a matter of time. But if it's important for you to have a Russian-speaking school, then you should probably pay attention to these two areas.
Thank you very much, Valeria.
All right, let's move on. We're getting to the most interesting, the most exciting part. These are our top 3 projects with high profitability. We'd like to present our flagship project. This is a project from our developer. It's truly large scale with full infrastructure because when a tourist comes to Bali, they wonder, where should I, for example, where should I go to a restaurant? Which fitness club should I visit? Or where can I go to see incredible sunsets? Or maybe I want to relax somewhere with friends, watch a movie, I don't know, just smoke a hookah or simply sit and chat. And where can I work? And this complex fully meets all the needs of a tourist. Because first of all, this is a complex with a huge giant lagoon that's 850 meters long. There are several swimming pools in the complex. And just imagine there are even units, apartments, where you have your own direct access to this lagoon. So you wake up, open the door to your terrace, and dive right into the lagoon. The entire complex is covered in greenery, like in Singapore. It's a strong concept because in any case, we're selling an investment product and sooner or later the investor will want to exit the project. Accordingly, for another investor, it will be important to know both what kind of income it generates, what the overall concept is, and what kind of infrastructure the complex has. Because tourists are attracted and now you need to always surprise them with something. There absolutely must be a large variety of different entertainments, and this complex fully delivers on that because it will have things like a movie theater and several swimming pools. One of the pools is an infinity pool on the roof, where you can simply watch these stunning sunsets with a view of the ocean. And no one will ever block your view because, as we remember, the maximum building height is 15 meters, which is exactly what we're adhering to. Next, there will be a large area for yoga classes. Valeria, let me add, as far as I recall, the land around you is designated as a green zone. And if the land is a green zone, then it cannot be built on in any way. Yes, and what's more, that's a really great point, Anastasia, because on one hand, the complex is located right in the center of Canggu, in the very heart, and on one side, we have direct access, a view of the green terraces. It's incredibly beautiful, and we know that there is a moratorium on green zones, so it's absolutely correct that they will not be built over. And even on clear days, when there are no clouds, you can see the volcano in the distance. So in Canggu, green terraces are actually quite rare because Canggu is all about the ocean, about parties, about that cool lifestyle. And it's absolutely true that if you want to see real jungle nature, it's better to go to Ubud. And in this complex, you'll really have a view from the units of a beautiful lagoon with imported white sand, because here in Canggu we have volcanic sand. It sparkles beautifully in the sun, but it's naturally dark in color. And in this lagoon, there will be a kids area, imported white sand, and plenty of sun loungers. And also, if, for example, you want to enjoy nature, you can, of course, buy a unit with a view of the green terraces, rice fields, or even facing the volcano. And what I want to highlight, the most appealing, the most attractive thing, of course, about this project. For this complex, we have prepared and agreed on a special offer for participants of our webinar. Until the end of November, you have the opportunity to purchase any unit in this complex with a 2% discount. Let's move on and see what other offers we have.
If you're interested, write to us. We will send you a special offer and calculate the profitability for you. I know the team has an amazing detailed financial model with different exit scenarios. We will calculate it specifically for your strategy, including all taxes, expenses, and the cost of operational services. Valeria, may I ask another question here for the viewers? And could you please tell us how much does it approximately cost to maintain the smallest studio in Laguna?
For the smallest studio in Laguna, the maintenance costs are as follows. Look, in terms of income, we rent exclusively for short-term stays. It generates the highest income. The occupancy rate in our complexes varies. It's around 85 to 86%. The management company, which handles absolutely everything, that is, they list the property on all booking platforms, they take a 20% management fee, and accordingly, we look at how the tourist lives here. It could be fully occupied or sometimes a bit lower, for example, around 19% as well. If we look at it in dollars, then the expenses will amount to about probably $800,000. And the investor will receive a net, fully clean and legal profit, already cleared of all booking platform fees and various taxes. That's $1,200 to $1,300 net. So if we ask our investors, even in Moscow, what can you buy for $115,000? That would bring us such a net income. Well, probably only if it's something truly unique. So that's why you can invest in the island of Bali and receive passive income from renting out your own property. So Anastasia, maybe you have another question about this project? I'm ready to talk about it for a very long time.
Honestly, I'm also ready to talk about your project for a very long time. I often recommend it to clients, so I don't have any questions. I can share even more during personal consultations, so feel free to reach out. We will be happy to consult you, send all the financial models, and go through all the questions down to the finishing materials.
Yes, and it's worth noting that only for Nevestate do we have such special terms agreed upon. Thank you. Special conditions. That's also
Not insignificant.
and important. We also have two complexes. One of them has a very strong concept in the form of a volcano. It's probably the only volcano on Bukit near Melasti Beach. Melasti is one of the most popular beaches, especially in terms of the number of photos taken there. You can see them on social media, and basically you can also track them in social media as well. Just 250 meters from this popular beach with white sand and blue water, there are amazing places.
Valeria, let me interrupt you and add that people from all over the world most often come to Melasti Beach to celebrate their honeymoon, their wedding trip. Yes, and if you go on Instagram and look at wedding photos of couples from all over the world, you'll see that it's exactly Melasti Beach. Yes?
It's probably the closest one, I think. The complex is located super close to this beach. If you look at how long it takes to get there by car or scooter, plus there will be a free golf cart that will take tourists to the beach, it's just a minute and a half, only a minute and a half, and you find yourself on probably the most famous and, judging by the photos, the most popular beach.
Yes, there's also the fact that people come to Melasti Beach and also to the neighboring beaches like Karmakandara Beach, expats and tourists from all over the island. Why? Because the beaches in Canggu are more suited for surfing, for parties, for watching sunsets. Naturally, there are no beaches in Ubud since Ubud is located in the center of the island. Ubud has its own charms, jungles, waterfalls, volcanoes. But when it comes to swimming, people from all over the island head to the Bukit Peninsula on weekends. Melasti Beach. Well, as far as I understand, Valeria, Melasti Beach is one of the most popular places for swimming.
That's right, that's exactly how it is. Here in this complex, we have unique units with premium quality and panoramic windows facing directly onto the ocean. Uluwatu and Bukit, among others, are all about the cliffs, meaning you have a full unobstructed view of the ocean. It really is incredibly beautiful. It's worth noting that the complex is quite well equipped in terms of infrastructure. In total, there will be 123 units in the complex. There will also be a fitness center that is a gym right in the complex. There will be a large networking area where you can relax, work, and socialize. There will also be several restaurants. A large swimming pool will stretch along the entire length of our complex. It's important to note here that if you buy a villa, each villa has its own yard and a private pool. At the same time, you can also use, and tourists can fully enjoy, the large pool, which will feature a volcano-themed concept, various lighting effects, and the main building itself will look like a volcano with volcanic rock, and in the center of the complex there will be an atrium which will use lighting to simulate rising lava. So this is all about beauty, the power of nature, and in general about merging with nature. And it's worth noting that every unit is equipped with a smart home system. So what does this mean? We come into the unit, the tourist arrives to relax, and with just a simple voice command, you can actually do absolutely everything you might need to do. I mean, you can close the windows, set the optimal and most comfortable air conditioning temperature, adjust the settings to your personal preference, and so much more. You can also turn on the lighting, turn on the lights absolutely everywhere, and even adjust them, for example, by color. All of this is made possible by the smart home system, which in turn makes these units even more popular among tourists. And of course, when a guest is carefully choosing which particular unit to rent, this is definitely a significant advantage as well. So I'd also like to take a moment to share with you another complex. This is also a really great complex, especially for those investors who might be somewhat wary of, say, leasehold. It has a very good leasehold, 41 years, plus a 19-year extension according to the contract. The complex itself is very compact and cozy, and it's even suitable for those investors and tourists who either come to Bali for the winter or maybe buy for themselves, because the complex has 51 units and consists of both apartments and villas. The entire area is fully secured 24/7. In terms of infrastructure, there will be 2 pools here, one of which is an infinity pool. This is really a great advantage that we have in some of our complexes. Tourists really love this kind of pool. They've truly taken a liking to it, so we try to include it in many of our projects. There will be restaurants, a spa, a barbecue area. Everything will be located right within this complex. And this complex is located 800 meters from Venlasti Beach, which is just a 4-minute walk. There will also be a golf cart running to the ocean to take tourists there and bring them back. The villas have exactly the same smart home system. And the price for a 3-bedroom villa starts at $600,000. These properties in particular generate really great returns, probably in the range of 10 to 16% per year. Also on Zoom, we can review together, and Anastasia, or really any Nevestate broker, can show you actual reports, not just made up numbers, but real reports that demonstrate the income from our units and the company. Well, of course, we look forward to seeing you in person with Anastasia, with the Nevestate brokers, and of course, including with our company as well. So, Anastasia, I'll hand it over to you.
Valeria, thank you so much. You explained everything in detail, very passionately, because I truly love the projects that Valeria represents. Personally, I recommend that our investors consider these projects first and foremost, simply because there is a clear concept and quality construction. I always tell investors that you need to choose a concept, projects, since we think in advance about how to exit investments and what will be liquid on the secondary market in a few years. When there is a boutique project with a clear concept, we understand that there really isn't anything like it on the island. It's something very unique to this particular location, and it will always be in demand among investors from all over the world. And I really like that the quality of construction, let me emphasize this again, really stands out on the island because the environment here is quite harsh. All your villas and complexes are thought out to the smallest detail, right down to the triple layer Italian waterproofing. That's why we invite all of you for a consultation. If you scan the QR code, you can also find it in the description. As you can see on the screen, there are links to all our social networks and a direct link to book a consultation. Come by and we'll arrange the best terms for you with Valeria, since we already have a special offer. Come, we'll send you financial models, invite you on a 3D tour, and maybe even meet you in person. Valeria, you do have that option, right? You meet clients in person and personally check them into your properties.
Yes, we do have that option. And every investor who comes to Bali, of course, gets to see all of our complexes, both those under construction and those already completed. And of course, you can stay and live in our complexes.
Yes, and that's very important because the team has already completed their 12th project. You can come in person and see all the projects for yourself. You can check the quality of construction, see everything, touch it with your own hands, and make a decision about buying because it really is a serious purchase. Your investments require this kind of approach. I think Valeria and her team will meet you, and you'll remember this tour for a long time. Thank you very much. Follow us on our social media. Once again, scan the QR code, follow us on social media, and we look forward to seeing you for a personal consultation.
Thank you, Anastasia. Dear investors, really go ahead and invest in great real estate. And it's so wonderful when you have passive income in dollars. It's truly amazing. And you can see it clearly in all the reports.
We wish everyone the same opportunity.
Have a great day, everyone. Stay in a good mood. And we'll see you at personal consultations with Nevestate.